All right, so we are recording now. Jamie, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Mariana.
Oh, Jamie.
I'm Jamie from Multnomah County. I do frontline case management here at the county. I think it helps to have a little bit of context about where someone's coming from in these presentations. We're in Portland, Oregon. I'm a client network navigator. We work in partnership with Cascade AIDS Project, and we are based in a medical team. We're embedded into the medical homes. That's where our office is with our clients. We probably have caseloads of up to 15 or so, and we are obviously doing the same work as you guys, helping clients work on reducing their viral load, medication adherence, work on A&D issues, mental health, homelessness. So one of the issues that frequently comes up for a lot of our folks is that they don't have phones. And if they don't have phones, it's really difficult to get a hold of them, and as well as obviously schedule appointments. So this is our experience accessing one of the free Lifeline cell phone programs. I'd love to hear some of your guys' feedback throughout the presentation about what your successes or challenges have been. And please feel free to stop and interrupt or ask questions throughout the presentation. And if I'll cover it later, I'll just let you know. Amy? Yeah.
Hi, it's Mariana. I'm just going to interrupt before you get started. I'm going to mute the line just so there's limited background noise. But again, like you just said, if anyone has questions or anything throughout the presentation, just dial *6 and that should unmute line.
Great, thank you.
You are no longer muted. You can unmute your line by pressing *6.
Okay, so this is the agenda. What's the Lifeline program, who's eligible, how to enroll. I'm going to open up some of the websites where the applications can be found and kind of navigate what that looks like. There can be a lot of information. It can be an overload sometimes. We're going to look at a sample application. I'll cover some of the challenges that I've noticed when we've been applying for these phone programs. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback about successes or challenges that you guys run into at your state when you're working on getting cell phones, if this is something that you access. And then I have some tips that I've kind of figured out from doing this a few times. So the Lifeline program is a federal government benefit program. You also hear it get called the Obama cell phone program. It's available through all 50 states. Generally, it's just a free cell phone. The great thing about it is it comes with a monthly allotment of free messages, voice minutes, and text messages. The text messages and the voice minutes vary by state, but generally you get about 500 free voice minutes your first 4 months, and then after the 4 months it drops down to about 250 voice minutes, and you always have unlimited text messaging. So if you guys have the capability to text your clients, then you would always be able to communicate via text or possibly provide appointment reminders via text. That's something that we've been doing in Portland, is doing the text reminders for appointments and checking in with our clients. A few of the extra features that are on there, voicemail. So a lot of clients just have a Google Voice. It'd be awesome if they could have just a regular voicemail that they can access anytime rather than being reliant on a Wi-Fi signal. It has call waiting, caller ID. There's not an annual contract. There's no activation fee, so there shouldn't be a sign-up charge. There shouldn't be any cost to it. If all they accessed was just the monthly free minutes, that would be all they needed. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. So there's different ways to qualify through this federal program. Basically, you can do it by the household income, or if you already participate in a few of the following programs. So if you're at 135% of the SPL in your state, or Medicaid, food stamps, Section 8 housing, SSI, LIHEAP, there are a couple different ones depending on your state. So you would want to go ahead and check the criteria for each one. Generally, I find that the food stamp one is the easiest way to go. A lot of our clients, if they don't have food stamps, that's quickly something that we're going to do. So that would be a pretty simple way to get them qualified. I'm going to go through more in detail specifically about what the application looks like and how you would, what kind of documentation is necessary. So let's go through and I'll pull up some of the different states and the different companies that offer these Lifeline programs. So Mariana, if you want to click on the Lifeline support link. And then click on companies in my state map. So why don't you go ahead and start with Oregon. So this is the state map. These are all of the states that offer the Lifeline tool. So this is specifically, you might have seen these other names or programs offering cell phones. So when I'm talking about this program, we tend to access the Assurance Wireless one frequently, but you'll notice there's a huge long list of all these different programs in your area. So you might be used to referring to the Lifeline program as a separate one. I'm going to kind of highlight the Assurance Wireless one more because we've been able to be more successful with that, but I'd also like to hear if you guys have accessed some other ones, how your experience was. So if you want to go back, let's maybe go ahead and check out some of the other states. Let's check out California's. So you can go ahead and scroll down. It looks like they have the Assurance Wireless too. Lots of options. Maybe go ahead and go through the other states as well, Mariana. So go ahead and do the North Carolina. And then the same, we probably don't need to go through the rest, but you'll all have plenty of options. So we'll go ahead and go back to the slides now. So that's always handy if you get overloaded with what kind of, what company or what brand to go to. But now we're going to go ahead and go to the Assurance Wireless links, and we're going to go over these ones because, like I said, these are the ones that we've been most successful with. And so go ahead. Great. So this is the main headlines, the main page for AssuranceWireless.com. It's pretty straightforward. So first, you can go ahead and check the available in your area. So Mariana, you can go ahead and put our 97202. That's Portland zip code. You would already know that you're eligible if you prefer to look at that state map to see if you have Assurance Wireless, or if you prefer, you can just go directly to this website and type in your zip code, which is what I prefer to do. So go ahead and hit submit. So you can apply online or do the PDF. I prefer to print out the PDF so I have all the papers on hand. It's up to you what you prefer, but I always do the paper versions with clients. I find that a lot of times I may not have access to a computer when I'm seeing a patient or a client, so I'll have the blank applications printed out, and I'll carry them in my bag when I'm out in the community or out in the field. And if I find or run into one of my clients, either at a medical appointment or in a shelter, we'll go ahead and fill out the form there. So that would be the advantage of just carrying the printed out forms with you. So go ahead and open the PDF. So you can go ahead and open the PDF. Great. So it's pretty straightforward. Legal first name, legal last name. You do need their date of birth, social security number. Hopefully that's not too much of a problem for you. I know that we have access to their medical records here, so it's not too difficult for you to find, but that could be a challenge for some of you. So this part can get a little tricky. If you notice, it says home address, and there's also the section that says mailing address. So the home address, it's okay if it's a temporary shelter. So in the past, you weren't eligible if you were staying in a homeless shelter or a place where multiple people received mail, you wouldn't be eligible. So some clients in the past remember applying for phones and they say, no, I didn't get it. I was living at the homeless shelter and I wasn't eligible. It's possible they're still eligible because they recently updated that policy. So under home address, I would put if they are homeless, yes, and I'd fill in as best as I could where they were staying, at least the city, the state, and the zip for where they're staying if they're homeless, if they don't have a specific street address. Mailing address, that's also where I would put where they get their mail. So a lot of our clients get mail at the HIV Day Center, which is a drop-in shelter for folks with HIV. So I often use that address. There's no need to specify a certain bed. You're able to share the general address of wherever it is that you're using. So once again, if you're at a shelter, multiple different people can use that shelter address and still get access to the phone. So the second section here is the eligibility section here. So like I said before, it's the program-based eligibility, or it's based off of income. So the program-based eligibility, these are some of the examples of the ones in Oregon. Depending on your state, you would want to pull up your own application. California looks a little bit different. They all look a little bit different, but generally, at least these main couple here are what will qualify you for the program. A few things about these. I know that for Medicaid, my experience has been clients don't always have copies of their insurance cards. So in terms of submitting eligibility, you'd have to make sure you check the right box and be sure that the type of documentation that you submit is actually what will prove that they're eligible. Like, for example, photocopying a food stamp card, that's not going to prove that they're eligible. That wouldn't be accepted. So there are certain types of program-based eligibility that you would need to be aware of. So for SNAP, the food stamp, that's generally what I would do the most. For us, we would walk down to the food stamp office with a client or a patient, ask for an award letter of their benefits that has the official letterhead, and that would be the documentation showing the proof. So the photocopy of the card, like if a client prints out a copy of their account that shows like a debit of them using their card, that's not going to work. The application will get denied. TANF, SSI, Medicaid. One of the things with Medicaid is, like I was saying before, our clients don't have copies of their insurance cards a lot. They lose them, or in Oregon, a lot of clients haven't received them. Maybe they recently switched insurances or re-enrolled in something. So that one's pretty difficult if someone doesn't actually have a copy of the card. Depending on your state, you might have access to a database that allows you to look in and check someone's benefits. I've tried before to submit like a screen printout showing someone's benefits before, and that doesn't work. It has to be a copy of the actual state insurance card front and back. So generally speaking, I just go back to the food stamps. I help clients get those, or I try to go that route because it's been the most successful. But depending on your guys' situations, that may not be as easy. The other documentation, it says Section 8, National School Lunch Programs, etc. And I just go ahead and re-summarize that you need the eligibility letter, and that's what shows that you're authorized. The other way to get access to this service is based off of your income. This is something I haven't tried before. You can see the household size and the yearly income. A lot of our clients that I work with here, they don't have access to the right proof of income. So this one explains that you would need pay stubs, Social Security benefits, a VA benefit, retirement benefits, or unemployment. Or it goes on to explain your tax returns, income statements, divorce decree. Those are all documents that would be difficult for a lot of us to get access to. So in terms of just being simple, I generally just skip it and go to the easiest program-based eligibility form that you have. So you can go ahead and move to the second page of the application unless someone has a question about that form at the top before we move on. Okay. So the second page here, this is where you have to choose an account PIN. So the account PIN number can be any 6 numbers. The reason for the PIN is because it's needed to activate the phone. You'll need it to add minutes on the phone. There are options to buy low-priced minutes for very inexpensive, but your client or patient would need access to the number there. So you want to pick something that they would remember. Or what I often do is I keep the application, I fax it in, keep a copy in their charts, and that way I have access to their PIN number later, because it's kind of hard to keep track of documentation at times for someone if they don't have a steady place that they're staying. The next question is the secret answer. The only reason why they would need to kind of remember their secret answer would be if they forgot their PIN or lost it. That would be a way for them to recover the PIN number. So if you didn't have a copy of the application, or if a client filled out the application without you and can't remember the PIN, they should be able to recover the number with the secret answer question. So you can scroll down a little bit. Great. So this part here is it seems really simple, but this is probably where we've had the most applications rejected. All these little checkboxes at the bottom, so you can have clients read and sign the following agreements. It's basically saying if they move to a new address within 30 days, you're going to tell Assurance Wireless. It's verifying that they only have one cell phone account, that they haven't had previous ones before. So they can go ahead and read and sign these things. That's pretty basic. These little boxes here, I can't stress enough how important it is that your client or you check all of these tiny little boxes. If you don't put a check next to all of these boxes, they will not approve your application, and it's a big headache. So we can go ahead and read it. It just says you certify that your household only receives one phone. You understand that you have to recertify the phone. Recertification is yearly. They will contact you by the mailing address that you submitted on the application. So every year, someone needs to recertify. Without that, they'll just terminate the benefits, and then your person would have to reapply. So it wouldn't be a big deal, but they want to make sure that your client knows that. Then the next one's pretty self-explanatory. Have the client print and sign. Try to stress that they print really clearly. We've had applications get sent back because their signature was their printed name was illegible. They couldn't make it out. So they're pretty specific. Make sure you put the dates. And then these 3 little check boxes down here by the stop sign, those get forgotten a lot. If I were you, I would pre-check those 6 boxes in advance before you have someone fill out the application, because the chances are if you're meeting with someone, you could be rushed. You might have another appointment. Your client might be processing about a lot of other issues, and so you might miss it. And if you miss it, then your application is going to be denied. So let's go ahead and move to the additional information slide, Mariana. Unless someone has any questions, we can stay on this application a little bit longer. Okay. Great. So we sort of talked about it a little bit, about what were some of the barriers and challenges that I've had with Assurance Wireless. So one would be the mailing address. A lot of folks don't have access to their mail consistently, or they just forget, don't check it very often. So this does require that your clients or patients check their mail. So once you submit that 2-page application, you could fax it in, save a copy. You would wait probably a week or so, and then what I would do would be call back they have a number listed on their webpage, and it's also on your application. I would call back using the information on your application and reference it. I generally say that I'm a caseworker. I'm calling to check the status of the cell phone application for the patient name. They don't have a problem talking to caseworkers. You won't have a problem checking on the status of your client's application. And then I would just ask, what's the status of the application? It's possible that if you had missed something on the application, they're going to deny it, but your client wouldn't necessarily communicate that to you. Assurance Wireless will mail your client a letter, and they'll just include another blank application with the letter. For a lot of clients, I've noticed that it's confusing to them. They remembered already filling it out, so when they see a duplicate application, they'll throw it away or not mention the letter that was attached that said something that was missing. So I found it to be most helpful to go ahead and check in probably the next week after it was submitted, or at least 2 weeks. Call, give them the client name. They'll ask you for the zip code of where you're at just to figure out what state you're talking about, and then ask the status. So at that point, they'll be able to look up the client's application, and there is an ID number. If you want to ask for it, you can. I've noticed that that's a way for you to keep it. For next time you call, you can just read them their ID number, and they'll pull open your client's file faster rather than having to look up your client every time. So I'd say ask for the ID number, check on it about every week or so. The importance of calling and checking in with your client or together would be that there's a lot of reasons why the application could be denied. Maybe your program eligibility documentation wasn't correct. Maybe your food stamp verification letter wasn't what they were looking for. Maybe they were over income. The only way that you're going to find out what the reason was will basically be if you call. I haven't been successful having clients be able to relay why they weren't eligible, so I just find that I always call with the client and figure out where they're at. They will tell you on the phone if the client's eligible for the program, so it's great to know rather than just having your client wait to receive a cell phone in the mail. Your client will already know if they're eligible. They'll tell you on the phone about how many weeks you should expect to receive the cell phone. If they've already had a Lifeline cell phone, they'll tell you if they've already had the phone. If there's a reason why there's a complication and they can't access this service, they'll give you the details about why your client can't access the phone. Another thing that's come up is the waiting period for the phone. This is largely dependent on follow-up, depending on your caseload, how often you see your clients or how often you have to check on this when your client's not present with you. The longer that I wait in between calling them, the longer it takes to get the phone. If I'm calling once a week, I could probably get it as fast as 30 days, I'd say at the fastest. But most of the time, it's going to take longer. There's always an issue that seems to come up. Recently, one of the issues that we've had with a client is we've had clients who were using a homeless shelter as their mail address, and the government is the one that reviews the eligibility form. So Assurance Wireless themselves aren't the one that's checking this documentation. It's the government who's checking. So a lot of times the government will ask for additional information, just verifying that it's correct. So recently we've had clients who are receiving a form in the mail that says, you listed this temporary address where we've noticed multiple households. Please confirm that this is your address. So it's a very simple form, but I've noticed that clients, once again, if they don't check their mail, they don't fill it out or send it back. So my purpose in calling is to know what to expect. So when I call, I ask, and that's what they would tell you. They would tell you, oh, it looks like we're going to require additional documentation because of where you lived. At that point, I was able to ask if they could fax the form to me directly. I explained that they don't get their mail very often. Could they send it to me? And that's when they explained that that's not an option. So for certain types of documentations for your state, you're going to learn what the restrictions are, and you're going to be able to problem solve the best way to help your client get that information filled out. So generally for me, I just give my clients a heads up what to look for. I say, it sounds like they're going to send you a form. They told me that they were going to send it to you in the next week or so. So I tell my patients to go check your mail, bring your mail in when you get it, and we can take a look at what it is and fill it out together. If I've heard from a patient they haven't received any documentations or forms in the next week or so, I would call back with the patient and ask that they resend or remail whatever form that your client may have missed. As far as other barriers, just I touched about it a little bit, getting the appropriate documentation for program eligibility. Occasionally you'll have clients who may not be eligible for food stamps for some reason, or they may not have their insurance card to provide documentation. That can be a struggle. A lot of times it takes a lot of smaller steps in order to get the right documentation to get it figured out. But, you know, in general, I feel like the client generally needs, you know, a client needs a social security number, they need an insurance card, they need food stamps anyway, so I feel like you'll address those barriers anyway, but because the phone is such an important asset for the clients and it encourages communication between the clinic, the provider, and the caseworkers, I would stress doing that work on the front end in order to get the phone sooner rather than just waiting to apply for the phone after you've already gotten it way later. So I always try to get all the documentation as soon as possible. This is probably one of the first things I would do with a client after getting them enrolled in food stamps, and obviously making sure they're enrolled in their medical home, that they've done their medical appointments and stuff as well. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Those are some of the tips that I've already covered. Consistently follow up with a provider company or whatever provider company you're going to use if it's not Assurance Wireless. Stay on top of them. Continue to call weekly. They'll give you an estimate. They'll tell you when they ship the phone, so you'll have an idea of when your client should expect the phone. If your clients don't get the phone, call. Ask them why your client didn't get the phone. In general, the communication will be the smoothest if it's the caseworker or the client together calling Assurance Wireless rather than relying on the mail. Keep copies of your client's application. There might be some questions on how to set up the phone. The phones that you receive are not Android phones. They're not iPhones. They're pretty basic, simple cell phones. The setup process is fairly straightforward. You just need the PIN number. There are very, very detailed instructions on the Assurance Wireless website that will go through how to set up your phone step by step. So normally it's so straightforward that clients set it up themselves. Sometimes they ask me for the PIN number, but even then it walks you through the phone itself. So you may not even need to necessarily walk your client through that process. Some other questions that kind of come up a lot are what to do if the phone is lost or stolen. Sometimes clients might trade the phone for a place to stay, for food, for various reasons, or they lose it. If that happens, your client would have access to an additional phone. So that phone number up there, 1-888-321-5880, that's listed on the Assurance Wireless website as well, so you don't have to remember it. But if your person did lose the phone, you would just call the number. It would suspend the service, and then Assurance Wireless would mail them another phone. You wouldn't have to do any additional paperwork or re-qualify. They would just have access to that additional phone. I don't always mention it that they get an extra one right away. I just let them know if anything ever happens to the phone or if you ever lose it, let me know and we can figure it out together. Just a reminder that you have to recertify yearly. That's something that I try to keep on my radar just because clients may have moved around by then. They may not have a steady address, so they may not even be getting the notifications by mail saying that they need to recertify it. So I keep it on my radar. and just check in with the clients and just remind them, this is something we have to do. So recertification, basically, it's the same program eligibility requirement. So as long as you're still eligible for the food stamps or Medicaid, you would still be eligible in the future for the phone. There's a 1-year warranty on the phone. The PIN number can be recovered if clients use it. And then you guys might have some additional questions about the phones. Why don't you go ahead and click on the FAQ page. That's where I get a lot of my questions answered. The website's pretty user-friendly. They seem to think of any question that your client might want to know or that you might want to know about the phone, what states it's offered, how many minutes, the recertification process, the PIN number, how do you find out more information about the phone, what if you lose it. Everything that you would probably ever want to know or that your client would want to know would be on here. And if these answers aren't detailed enough, then I always call in addition and I reference this specific page and I reference the policy and I make sure to make it clear, the policy says here, can you give me more and additional information about blank? And they're generally happy to explain whatever snaggle I'm running into. So now I wanted to open up and kind of ask, have any of you guys applied for these government cell phones before? What kind of challenges have you had, or have you had success with another carrier besides Assurance Wireless that you find works well?
And just a reminder, you'd have to unmute your lines, so and you can do that by pressing *6.
Yeah, so you guys can feel free to unmute your lines. I kind of would like to hear what it's like for you in your state and figure out if there's more ways that we can streamline this process in Oregon, or hear some of the challenges that you've had.
Hey, this is Autumn from US Cares in Florida.
Hey.
We don't use the Lifeline program. Our go-to in Florida for wireless is Assurance and SafeLink. I personally prefer SafeLink. It's pretty smooth. You can do it online, so the client doesn't really have to sign besides one spot. We submit it electronically, and it comes within 7 to 14 business days.
That's awesome.
The only thing that we have to make sure is whatever address they have listed with DCF matches, because SafeLink will reject it, which is with all the other Lifeline phones.
Can you say that part again?
The address that they have listed with Department of Children and Families, whoever they apply for their food stamps or Medicaid, has to match. So if you apply through like any type of Lifeline phone, if for some reason they give you a different address, it'll automatically be rejected. So we always make sure that we change the address before we apply for the phone so it doesn't delay the process.
And that's with the SafeLink?
Yeah, that's with SafeLink or Assurance. Any Lifeline, they're connected with the TANF system for DCF, TANF, or food stamps. So if your address does not match the DCF, ours is Department of Children and Families. If it doesn't match their system, then Lifeline or anyone will deny you.
That's a great tip. I haven't run into that, but my clients' addresses must be updated, but that's really good to know.
Yeah. So we always make sure we can log on to like DCF online because calling takes forever. So we always change the address first. If they're going to like a shelter, or we make sure that whatever address they have, with sometimes their address is on file from like years ago and they don't even are familiar what address it is. So before we even apply and delay the process, we just make sure we change the address first.
That's a kind of good preemptive. It sounds like it would save a lot of time rather than having to try to go back and fix it afterwards.
Yeah. And the only barriers we run into, a lot of clients like to double dip. So someone on the streets will tell them about Assurance while they have SafeLink and vice versa. So they try to apply, and before the system may catch up, they actually may have both phones at hand. And then when they catch up, all phones get suspended at once. So what
do you do when that's happened in the past? Have you been able to reactivate one, or what's been your experience?
Yeah, we've been able to reactivate one. We have to call. We have to ask them which one they choose. It's really competitive between both companies because some offer more minutes and vice versa. So, and the clients kind of get to know the different phones. SafeLink is common for one phone, Assurance is common for another. So the clients select which one they want to keep. We actually have to call that company and cancel the service. It takes about 14 days for everything to pick up in the system. And then when they reapply for SafeLink, SafeLink can see that they don't have Assurance.
Right, that makes sense.
And we just let them know, hey, this is a delay because, you're going through both systems here. You can't do that. It's both government funded. They understand and we don't really have that problem. And there's no, the clients, they're pretty much patient.
Right, absolutely. In Oregon, we don't have a lot of people on the streets that offer to do this. A lot of times when we're doing this, clients, they have heard of it, as I said, the Obama phone, they've heard about it, but they don't know exactly. So generally, we kind of end up going through whatever program we're most successful with, kind of like you guys are. We haven't had too many problems with people double dipping, generally just because I call to check on the status of it. If there was some sort of problem or if they weren't eligible, they would tell us at that point. But as you said, even if they do qualify for two or they've accidentally already applied, it sounds like it's an easy fix as well.
Yeah, every one of our clients has a SafeLink or, like you say, Obama phone or Assurance phone. They either came to us with one already active, or that we have a few that didn't have one activated, and we had to reapply for them. But everyone, it's pretty common in Florida.
Right. That's awesome. No, I think that's absolutely great, and I think I remind clients too, this isn't a free service. This is for our clients. They should have access to it. So if you're having trouble working through the system, I would just challenge you to stick with it. It sounds like you guys in Florida have kind of figured out your system and you've figured out how to streamline it. And we've kind of figured out how to streamline it here in Oregon to meet our clients' needs. But it's definitely one of our goals to make sure that, clients can call their providers, that clients can get reminder calls, that clients can get text messages from people.
Yeah, I like the part when they run out of minutes and they can still text. So our clients are like, hey, I can't talk but text, and then they'll hang up real quick. But they rather text. A lot of them, they kind of get familiar with the phone.
Right. One of the other things I know, as they mentioned here in Florida, that there are lots of different additional minutes plan. I know that you can get additional minutes for as low as $5. So a lot of clients may have already had at one point a track phone. So I would still recommend that they apply for Assurance because generally people can't afford track phone minutes consistently. $5 to get an extra 500 to 250 minutes is really budget friendly. A lot of clients in Oregon pick up cans and get the deposits from the cans, and that's just a way that they pick up a few extra dollars here and there. So that's a good reason why they could apply for the Assurance Wireless or the government phone anyway.
Awesome.
Does anyone else have any comments or feedback or another carrier that they've used that's been successful in your state? Okay, well, if there are no more questions, that's it.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks.
So if there are no other questions or comments, we can just wrap up a little early, and we will make sure to post these slides and the presentation online. And I will include Jamie's email address too, so if anyone has comments that they'd like to send personally, you can do that as well.
Great.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks everyone else for participating today. Have a great afternoon.